They locked a woman in a windowless room for having the wrong shoes. 11 feet by 9. A camera in the corner with the light switched off, because footage you don't have is a shrug. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't call a lawyer. She sat down, and in 83 hours, 9 people were going to vote on $4.8 billion for the airline that put her in there. Not one of them knew her name was on the report. She could have opened the envelope, ended it in 4 seconds. Watched them beg. She left it sealed, because somewhere in that building, in a drawer nobody had opened in 14 years, sat a list with her father's name on it. The door closed at 10:12 in the morning. Not slammed. Closed. There's a difference, and Naomi Reeves had spent 9 years of her life learning it. A slam is anger. A sislamus is a person losing hold of a situation. But a door that closes soft with a click like a tooth setting into place, that's procedure. That's a building doing what it was built to do. The room was 11 feet by 9. She counted it in floor tiles. White light overhead, the kind that makes everybody look like they've been sick for a week. A metal table, bolted down. 2 chairs that didn't match. Up in the corner near the ceiling, a camera in a smoked plastic dome. The little red light on it was off. Naomi noticed that. Filed it. Said nothing. In 83 hours, 9 people around a table in Seattle were going to vote on whether to hand $4.8 billion to the airline that had just put her in this room. 12,000 paychecks, 1 vote. And not a soul on the other side of that door knew her name was on the report. On the table in front of her sat a large envelope. Cream stock, heavy, sealed at the flap with a disc of red wax pressed with a crest. She'd looked at every working day for 6 years. She did not open it. She folded her hands on the cold metal and waited, and her heartbeat was doing something dishonest in her throat. And she thought, clear as a bell in her father's voice, "Sit up straight, baby. They're watching." 36 hours and 32 minutes earlier, she'd been standing at her kitchen counter in her socks, eating cold rotisserie chicken out of the tub with her fingers. That's how these things start. Not with thunder. Monday night. 9:40. The house was quiet the way a house gets quiet when it's been holding one person a long while. Naomi bought it 11 years back, when she still had the kind of job that made banks polite to you. 3 bedrooms. She used one. Her laptop sat open on the counter beside a stack of mail she'd been ignoring for 2 weeks. The email came in with no subject line. The sender sues a string of letters and numbers on one of those services that eats the message after 72 hours. The whole thing was 3 lines long. There's a list at Airline. It isn't in any handbook. Nobody who's on it knows. That was all. No name, no signature, no ask. Naomi read it once, wiped her fingers on a paper towel, read it again, and here's what she did not do. Because she'd stopped being that woman a long time ago, she did not lean in. She did not feel that little electric zip up the spine that used to come with a good tip in the old days, back when she had a firm behind her and an investigator on retainer and a jury waiting somewhere down the hall. She felt tired, because she'd gotten 100 of these. Everybody in compliance does. Half of them are somebody's with a grudge and a keyboard. A quarter are somebody's ex-husband, and most of the rest are true but unprovable, which in her line of work is the same as false, only sadder. She reached to close the laptop, and her hand stopped. There's a list at Airline. Airline. And Naomi stood there in her kitchen, in her socks, with the refrigerator humming behind her, and she said the name of that airport out loud once, to nobody. Her father worked out of Hangar 4 at Airline International for 31 years. 31 years of turbine work and busted knuckles and coveralls that smelled like jet fuel no matter how many times you washed them. Otis Reeves, 6'1", quiet as a church on a Tuesday, hands like a pair of catcher's mitts. He'd come home most nights and park his truck in the driveway, and then he'd sit in it not long. 4 minutes. 6. Naomi used to watch him from her bedroom window when she was supposed to be doing homework. This big man sitting perfectly still behind the wheel of a parked truck in his own driveway, headlights off, hands at 10 and 2, like he was still going somewhere. Then he'd get out, come in the side door, kiss her mother on the temple, ask what was for dinner. She never once asked him what he was doing out there. 44 years old, and she still some nights when she couldn't sleep wondered what he would have said if she had. He died 4 years ago in February. Fast. The kind of fast people call a blessing when they can't think what else to say. She looked at those 3 lines a long time. Then she pulled the stool over, sat down and opened a new tab. Here's what you should understand about Naomi Reeves. On Monday night, she was not a woman with power. She had a title. Head of Compliance Review, Ashgrove Trust. It sounded like something. It was something, the way a wrench is something. She read files. She checked whether the things institutions swore they were doing lined up with the things institutions were actually doing. She wrote reports. She did not decide anything. The board decided. 9 people around a table in Seattle, and on Friday morning at 9 o'clock, those 9 people were going to vote on releasing the financials of a $4.8 billion restructuring facility to Kestrel Air. $4.8 billion. Numbers that big stop meaning anything, so Naomi had taught herself to translate. 4.8 billion was 12,000 paychecks. It was route maps and pension contributions and a maintenance base in a town where the airline was the only employer that offered dental. 4.8 billion was, once upon a time, a man in a driveway in a parked truck. Her report was one input, one document in a stack. The board could read it and vote yes anyway. They'd done it before. But her report was the only document in that stack with a living person's signature on it who'd actually gone and looked. 9 years ago, Naomi had been something else entirely. Second chair on a hiring discrimination class action against a distribution company with warehouses in 6 states. 940 plaintiffs, 2 years of her life. Boxes of depositions stacked to the ceiling in a rented office with a broken thermostat. They lost the class. Not the case, the class. A judge decertified it on the question of commonality, which is a word that means each of you 940 people was humiliated in your own individual way, so you'll have to sue one at a time, which meant never. Naomi had stood in a parking garage afterward with her keys in her hand for 40 minutes. She called each of the 6 named plaintiffs herself. She insisted on that. Nobody's paralegal was going to do it. The 4th call was a woman named Ardelia who'd worked a picking line on nights for 11 years, and Ardelia listened to the whole explanation without once interrupting, and then she said, "So, it was too many of us. That's the problem. There was too many of us." Naomi never took another case. She went into compliance instead, which is what lawyers do when they still want to be useful but can't stand to be responsible anymore. Compliance is a room with no jury in it. Compliance is control frameworks and checklists, and a report that goes in a stack. Compliance is safe, that was the point. She worked until 1 in the morning. Pulled Kestrel Air's public complaint filings for 2 fiscal years. Pulled the airline's own passenger service reporting. Pulled the aggregate numbers Halloran International published on secondary screening referrals, which is the polite industry phrase for we took somebody out of line and had a conversation with them. The numbers were fine. That's what bothered her. Because numbers are never fine. Numbers are lumpy. Real human behavior across 19 months and a couple million passengers makes shape with bumps in it. A bad August, a spike when somebody new takes over a shift, a dip when a supervisor goes out on leave. Kestrel's Halloran numbers were smooth as a plate, which meant one of 2 things. Either that station was the most consistently run ground operation in the country, or somebody was reporting a number instead of counting one. Naomi sat back and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. Don't. Because she knew this feeling, Seuss. This was the feeling right before 2 years of her life went into boxes in a rented office with a broken thermostat. Don't do this. Write it up. Note the anomaly. Recommend enhanced monitoring. Go to bed. She looked at the last result on the screen. A complaint filed against Kestrel Air at Halloran, 19 months back. Passenger removed from a priority boarding line for supplementary verification. Case status. Closed. No finding, not substantiated, not resolved. Zones not resolved, no finding, which in the language of institutions means the file went in a drawer and the drawer got shut and nobody wrote down why. There were 4 of those. 4 complaints in 19 months. 1 station, all closed exactly the same way. Smooth as a plate. Naomi closed the laptop. Went upstairs, brushed her teeth, lay down in the dark on her back with her hands folded on her stomach like a woman in a casket, and stared at the ceiling. Nobody who's on it knows. At 2:20 in the morning, she got up, went back down, opened the laptop, and booked a first-class ticket on Kestrel Air. Halloran to Seattle. Wednesday 10:40. She paid for it with her own card. She told no one. Tuesday. Now, here's a small thing that's going to matter later, so keep hold of it. Naomi Reeves called her boss Tuesday morning at 10:10, and she lied to him, not a big lie, a shaped one. Harold Stain was 61 years old and had been at Ashgrove for 22 of them, and he had the gift of sounding delighted to hear from you while making it perfectly clear you had 11 seconds. Naomi. Harold. I'm out of the office Wednesday. Fine doing what? Tlot, site work. Pause. Half a second. She heard him set down whatever he'd been holding. Kestrel site work? Ground operations. The report's Thursday night. The report will be Thursday night. Because the vote is Friday at 9, Naomi, and I've got Wexler asking me twice a day whether there's anything in this file that's going to make his more interesting. There's an anomaly in the Halloran numbers. I want to look at it before I sign something. Longer pause. Look at it how? And Naomi, standing in her bedroom with one shoe on, said, by reading it, which was true, which was also not the whole of it, and Harold Stain had not gotten to be Harold Stain by failing to hear a woman leave the back half of a sentence in her mouth. Naomi, Harold, don't be interested, Nate. Then she sat down on the edge of the bed with one shoe on and put her hand flat on her chest. What are you doing? My job. Your job is a spreadsheet. Your job is a control matrix. Your job does not involve buying a plane ticket with your own money like some kind of... She didn't finish it. And here's the part she'd think about later, in a rental car, in the rain. There was a way to do it clean. Section 9 of the monitoring protocol. She knew it cold. She'd read the thing 40 times, allowed covert review by written board resolution. She could have asked. She could have filed the request Tuesday morning and had it Wednesday. Except a resolution goes to the board secretary, and the board secretary circulates it. And 11 people would have to see it, and one of those 11 would pick up a telephone, because one of those 11 always does. And by Wednesday morning, that lounge would have been the best-run room in America. So she didn't ask. She put on her other shoe. It was Wednesday morning. She stood in front of her closet for 11 minutes. Now understand something. Naomi Reeves owned good clothes. She had a charcoal suit that fit her like it had opinions. She had a coat that made airport employees call her ma'am from 30 feet off. She had, in a box on the shelf, her mother's pearls, which she wore twice a year and touched about 40 times more than that. She looked at all of it. And then she reached past all of it, to the left side, where the ordinary things lived. Gray turtleneck. Black slacks, a little worn index in the seat, low-heel shoes she'd had resoled twice because they were comfortable and she was not made of money. She pulled her hair back, pinned it. Put on no earrings at all. The carry-on she picked was navy, canvas, soft-sided, scuff on the bottom corner from a curb in Atlanta in 2019. She stood in front of the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked like somebody's aunt going to see a specialist. This is the experiment, she thought. Because it was. That's the whole thing right there. That's the entire method. You cannot audit whether systems treats people fairly by walking into it dressed like money. Money is a uniform. Money answers the question before anybody asks it. Show up in the charcoal suit with the coat and the pearls, and every single person in that building will treat you beautifully, and you will learn nothing at all, and you will fly to Seattle and write a report that says the system is fine. So you take the uniform off. You walk in as a woman, just a woman with a valid ticket, and you find out what a valid ticket is actually worth in that room. She picked up her phone off the dresser, looked at herself one more time, and said out loud to an empty bedroom in a voice she hadn't used in 9 years, "All right." Halloran International sits 90 miles east of the mountains, which means when you fly west out of it, you land in Seattle 2 hours earlier than you left. Naomi came in through door 3 at 9:40 in the morning. Because door 3 is closest to short-term parking, and because a man used door 3 for 31 years. She hadn't meant to think about that. She thought about it anyway, the whole way across the atrium, the way you do. The terminal did what terminals do. Roared without seeming loud, rolling luggage on hard floors, a gate announcement bouncing off glass, somebody's grandbaby losing his entire mind by the pretzel stand. That smell of coffee and industrial carpet, and underneath it all, faint and permanent, jet fuel. Security took 11 minutes, uneventful. She kept her shoes on, which is a thing you get for being past the age everybody thinks of as young, and it delighted her every single time. Then up the escalator, left, and there it was. The Kestrel Air Summit Lounge, frosted glass, brushed brass letters, a door that whispered instead of clunking. She stood outside it a second with her hand on the strap of her scuffed navy bag. Last chance to go put on the coat. She pushed the door open. The lounge smelled like eucalyptus. Somebody made that decision. Some person in a meeting in a building decided this room should smell like eucalyptus. And now it does. Forever. At 7 in the morning and 11 at night. Marble floors that handed your footsteps back to you. Low leather chairs the color of an expensive cigar. A wall of glass cast looking out at the ramp, where two of Kestrel's Wasson-Slayett aircraft sat nose in with their bellies open. Men in vests moving underneath them like something out of a nature documentary. And people. A man in a quarter-zip pullover conducting a phone call in a voice engineered to be overheard, saying the word bandwidth twice in 8 seconds. A woman with a small dog in a bag on the chair beside her, the dog in a sweater, the woman in the same sweater. Two men at the bar at 9:45 in the morning, both drinking something brown, neither one talking. There was a hydration station. That's what the little brass sign said. Hydration station. Glass pitchers water with cucumber slices floating in them like specimens. Naomi's mouth almost moved. Lord. She walked in and felt it land on her. Not all at once. That's the part people get wrong when they tell these stories after. It's never a gasp. Nobody stops mid-sentence. Nobody points. It's slower than that, quieter, and much worse. It's the man in the quarter-zip whose eyes come up off his phone, register her, go back down, a beat too late. It's the woman with the dog who looks at the door, then at Naomi's bag, then at Naomi's shoes, then away. It's a change in the room air pressure. 2 or 3 heads turning maybe 15 degrees and turning back, and every one of those people could stand up in a courtroom and swear under oath that they did absolutely nothing. Because they did do absolutely nothing. That's the trick of it. That's why it's never actionable. Naomi kept walking. Didn't slow down, didn't speed up, didn't look at the floor, because looking at the floor is where apologizing starts. And she had not come here to apologize. She went to the reception podium, a woman behind it in a slate blue Kestrel jacket, maybe 30, and her face did the thing. It's a very small thing, a quarter-second recalibration. The smile arrives, but on a delay, and about 11% smaller than the one before it. Naomi had spent 2 years of her life taking depositions about the 11%. Good morning, Naomi said. Sure, she had the pass up already. Kestrel Air Reeves, Naomi A's. Seat 2C, priority, Group 1. She laid her driver's license beside it. The scan chirped green. Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Enjoy the lounge. That was it. Professional, 4 seconds. And Naomi thought, walking off toward the far side of the room, well, there you go. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I came apart at 1 in the morning over a smooth data set. Maybe that email was somebody's ex-husband. And maybe I'm about to spend 4 hours and $1,100 discovering this airline is exactly as boring as it looks. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be nice? She sat down in a chair by the window with her back to the glass so she could see the room. Old habit. She lasted about 90 seconds before she noticed the woman at the operations desk. The operations desk was tucked in the corner past the bar. A waist-high counter, 2 monitors, a phone on a coiled cord, and a woman standing behind it who was not sitting down even though there was a stool. 50s. Silver hair, cut short and squared off at the back, the kind of haircut that takes 8 minutes and is never wrong. Slate blue jacket with 3 service pins on the lapel in a straight vertical line. Reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she was looking at Naomi, not staring, looking. And she knew what she was doing, the same way Naomi had known about the door. The name tag was too far off to read. Her name was Deborah Vanthus, and she'd been with Kestrel Air at Halloran for 26 years, and she'd stopped sitting on that stool in 2011. Because in 2011, Deborah Vance had been sitting on that stool. Sitting there, working through a vendor invoice, when a passenger with an expired travel document walked past her desk and got all the way to the aircraft door. The write-up took her off a station manager track and put a permanent line in a file somewhere, and the line used the word lapse. She'd been standing up ever since. 14 years of standing up. Deborah Vance did not think of herself as a woman who disliked anybody. She thought of herself as a woman who noticed things. And what she noticed, at 9:51 on a Wednesday morning, was a passenger in the Summit Lounge who did not match her seat. She could not have told you what that meant. If you'd put her under oath and somebody would eventually, in a room in Seattle, with a court reporter in it, she could not have named a single specific sick policy the woman by the window was violating. The bag was worn. The shoes were flat. There was no watch. Deborah Vance reached under the counter and came up with a gray plastic binder. Naomi watched her do it. Watched the woman's hands come up with a 3-ring binder, gray, the kind you buy at an office supply store for $4, and set it on the counter below the level of the monitors where a passenger at the desk would never see it. Watched her open it, turn one page, turn another. Naomi's stomach went cold and interested at the same time, a sensation she had not had in 9 years and had not missed, and now horribly missed. That's not a computer. Everything in this building is a computer. The boarding passes are computers. The bags are computers. The doors are computers. So what in God's name is in a $4 binder? The woman closed it, put it back under the counter, then picked up the phone on the coiled cord and said 11 words into it while looking directly at Naomi Reeves. Naomi turned her head, unhurried, and looked out the window at the ramp. Her hand went into her bag. Not for the envelope. She wasn't anywhere near ready for the envelope. Her hand went to the small flat recorder, clipped inside the interior pocket, and her thumb found the switch by feel, the way you find a light switch in your own house in the dark. She turned it on, and in that moment, by the glass in a gray turtleneck cucumber water 15 feet to her left. Naomi Reeves understood a thing about herself she had been carefully not understanding since 2:20 on Tuesday morning. She had not come to Halloran to observe. She had come here to be stopped. That was the design. That was the whole experiment, and she'd built it and paid for it and dressed for it and driven herself to it, and she'd been saying the word audit in her head for 36 hours, so she wouldn't have to say the real word out loud. She'd made her the bait. Because you cannot prove a room's temperature by looking at it. Yeah, okay, she thought. Hey, okay, fine, you're here, now let them do it. Her hands folded in her lap were not shaking. She checked, twice. They came at 9:58. Not security. That's the part that gets misremembered later. It wasn't uniformed officers with radios and a stride. It was worse than that, and more ordinary. It was a gate agent. Young. 26 maybe. Black, with a fade cut sharp enough to slice bread, a Kestrel Air name tag that read J. Boyd, and he came across that marble floor holding a handheld scanner like it was a subpoena somebody had handed him and told him to go deliver. He stopped in front of her chair. Miss Reeves? Yes. Morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you. Could I take one more look at your boarding pass? Naomi looked up at him. Looked at him for maybe 2 full seconds, which is a long time when a person is standing over you, because his voice was fine. Professional, warm, textbook book. But his shoulders were up around his ears, and he was holding that scanner in both hands like a hymnal, and there was a muscle going in his jaw. You already scanned it, she said, mild. At the door. Yes, ma'am, this is a... He stopped, started over. It's a secondary. A secondary. Yes, ma'am, is that a normal thing? Pause. It happens, said Jarrett Boyd, which is a beautiful piece of work when you think about it. 6 months on the jobs, and he'll already learned the most valuable sentence in corporate America. It happens. Not yes. Not no. Nobody in the history of this country has ever been fired for it happens. Naomi held up her phone. Sure, she said. Go ahead. He scanned it, and she watched his face. She was watching his face and not the screen, which was the right call, because his face is where it happened. The scanner chirped. Green. And Jarrett Boyd's thumb, already moving toward the button to clear the display, stopped. Half a second, maybe less. Call it 4/10. His eyes tracked across that little screen, left to right, and something behind them dropped to floor. Bumps. Once, like an elevator settling. Then his thumb finished the motion, and the screen cleared, and he lifted his head and gave her a smile with absolutely nothing behind it. You're all set, ma'am. Thank you for your patience. Naomi said. He started to turn. Young man, he stopped. She kept her voice at conversation volume because the man's quarter zip was 11 feet away and this was not for him. What did it say? Jarrett Boyd stood absolutely still. Ma'am, on your screen. When you scanned my pass, something came up. What did it say? She watched him decide. Could see it running in real time, the whole keel behind a 26-year-old's eyes. 6 months in, probationary, an apartment. A car note, a supervisor 40 feet away asking him a question he was absolutely lopsically not authorized to answer. It cleared you, ma'am, he said. That's not what I asked. I know, 3 words, quiet, nearly under his breath, I know. Then he walked away, and Naomi Reeves sat very still in a leather chair in a room that smelled like eucalyptus, and something enormous and cold and slow began to turn over in her chest. At 10:04, the woman from the operations desk came out from behind the counter. She crossed the lounge without hurrying, reading glasses down on her nose now, hands empty. A little smile. She stopped beside Naomi's chair, standing at exactly the angle they teach you, slightly to the side, never square, never looming. Messrs. Reeves, I'm Deborah Vance. I'm the ground services supervisor here at Halloran. How's your morning going? It's going. I hate to do this to you. Warm. Rueful. Genuinely rueful. And that was the thing that got Naomi. The woman honestly sounded like she hated to do it. I got a documentation discrepancy on your reservation, and I need it cleared up before boarding. It's going to take about 10 minutes. Naomi looked up at her. What's the discrepancy? It's a systems thing. Flagged on our end, not yours. That's not an answer, Miss Vance. The smile stayed exactly where it was. Didn't flicker. 26 years in. I know it's frustrating. I'm not frustrated. I'm curious. Well, if you'll come with me, we'll get you sorted and back here with time to spare. Can I take your bag? No, thank you. That's fine. And Naomi Reeves stood up. Stood up in a room with 11 other passengers in it. And every one of those 11 people when they're looking. Because there is nothing on God's earth more interesting to a bored traveler than another traveler having a problem. The man in the quarter zip had lowered his phone. The woman with the dog had a hand on the dog. The two men at the bar had turned around on their stools, both of them, in unison. It's like a swimming team. Naomi picked up her scuffed navy bag, put the strap over her shoulder, and she looked at Deborah Vance and said, at a perfectly normal volume, lead the way. They walked. Out through the whispering door, left down a service corridor where the marble quit and the industrial tile started, past a supply closet, past a door marked crew. Naomi's shoes made a small flat sound on that floor, and the wheels of her bag made a small rolling one, and behind her Deborah Vance's shoes made no sound at all. Because Deborah Vance was 26 years ago to buy rubber soles. At the end of the corridor, there was a gray door with no window in it. Deborah Vance held it open. Right in here. Somebody'll be with you shortly. Naomi stepped inside, and the door closed at 10:12 in the morning. Not slammed. Closed, 11 feet by 9. She counted it in floor tiles. She set her bag on the second chair, the one that didn't match. Sat down that did. The table was cold under her hands. She took the envelope out and set it in front of her. Cream stock, red wax, the Ashgrove Trust crest pressed into it. She put both hands flat on either side and left it shut. Not yet. Not for them. Not in here. In here, it's a party trick. She looked up at the camera in the corner, red light off, looked at it a while. Now why is that? Why would a room like this have a camera that isn't running? Unless the camera in a room like this isn't for the room. Unless it's for a lawyer someday. And somebody figured out a long time ago that footage you have is a liability, and footage you don't have is a shrug. She checked her phone. 10:14. Boarding at 10:20 for a 10:40 departure. 6 minutes. They were going to hold her past boarding. Obviously. That was the shape of it. Hold her past boarding, then discover the discrepancy had resolved itself, then walk her down and put her on that aircraft at the very last second in front of 140 people who had been sitting there 20 minutes. So that every soul on that airplane would understand, without one word being spoken, exactly what kind of passenger she was. Naomi Reeves sat in a bolted-down chair in an 11 by 9 room and felt her father sit down next to her, not literally. She wasn't losing her mind, but she felt him. The specific weight of him. The way he used to lower himself onto the end of her bed when she was upset about something at school and just sit there, saying nothing until she was ready. 31 years. Hangar 4. 4 minutes in a parked truck in his own driveway with his hands at 10:02. Daddy, what were you doing out there? The door opened at 10:19, 2 of them. A man in a thirties, tall, carrying a notebook, an actual paper notebook, which she found interesting, and a woman in a matching shirt who stayed by the door and never sat down. The man sat, put the notebook on the table, clicked a pen. Miss Reeves, full name, Naomi Adeyemi Reeves, or wrote some of it. Purpose of travel today? And Naomi said, is that a question you're required to ask? He looked up. Ma'am, I'm asking whether that question is in a manual somewhere, because I've flown about 400 times and no ground services employee has ever asked me the purpose of my travel. So I'd like to know if it's a policy, or if it's you. The pen stopped moving. It's a standard verification question. Standard where? Ma'am, I'm not being difficult with you. And she wasn't. Her voice was low and even and nearly kind. You've got a job. I understand the job. I'm going to ask you one thing, and I'll keep asking it until somebody answers, and then I'll cooperate with anything you want. Ready? He waited. Is this a random check? Naomi said. Or did somebody request it? Silence. The woman by the door shifted her weight. I don't have that information, the man said. Then get somebody who does. Messrs. Reeves, if you just, and whichever it is, as Naomi said, I'd like it in writing. The pen came off the paper entirely. In writing. Write down random and put your name under it. If it was requested, write down who requested it and put your name under that. Either one's fine with me. I'm not asking you to do anything except say on paper what you're already doing in this room. And here's the thing. Here is the exact thing. The hinge. The reason this particular Wednesday turned to what it turned into. He couldn't do it. Not wouldn't. Couldn't. Because there was no box on any form in that building for what was happening in that room, and the second he wrote a word down, he'd be the only human being on Earth with his name attached to it. He looked at the woman by the door. She looked at the floor. And Naomi Reeves, who had spent 2 years of her life learning that the entire architecture of American injustice rests on nobody ever having to sign anything, felt something all the way loose for the first time since a parking garage 9 years ago. Excuse me a minute, the man said. He picked up his notebook. He left. The woman by the door left with him. The door closed. 10:24. Boarding had started 4 minutes ago. Naomi sat alone and did not move and did not touch the envelope and listened to the ventilation and thought about Ardelia on the 4th phone call saying there was too many of us. Then she stood up. She walked to the door, not to open it. She was not going to open it. The whole evidentiary value of this was that she'd been placed in a room and left in it. And the second she opened that door, she handed somebody the ability to say she'd been free to leave the entire time. She walked to the door because there was a narrow strip of glass in the wall, beside it, 6 inches wide, wire reinforced, looking out at a corner of the corridor. And on the other side of that strip of glass, 40 feet down the hall, was the back of a workstation. A monitor angled toward the corridor because whoever installed it did it in 1998 and nobody had touched it since. A chair, and Deborah Vance standing, not sitting, reading glasses on, right hand on a mouse. Naomi put her shoulder against the wall and looked through the glass. Too far to 30 feet. The screen was a smear. But then the man with the notebook came into frame, and he said something, and Deborah Vance said something back and leaned in and typed, and the screen changed. Naomi lifted her phone. Slow, casual. A woman checking the time. Camera. Zoom. All the way in, past the point where it goes ugly, into that grainy digital soup where every pixel is a guess. She held her breath. Took 23 pictures. Then put the phone at her side, walked back to the chair and sat, and her heart was going like a bird in a shoebox. She waited until 10:31. Nobody came. At 10:31, she brought the phone up under the table and started swiping. Blur, blur, motion smear, a shot of the man's back, blur. The seventh one was almost clear, a gray-blue screen, a passenger record layout she recognized, because every airline in North America runs some cousins of the same thing. Reservation locator, flight 1147, seat 2C. Reeves Naomi A, and underneath the name, in a field she had never once seen on a passenger record in her life. Not in 6 years at Ashgrove, not in 14 station audits, not a single one of the 1,100 pages of Kestrel Air's own documented operating procedures she'd read on a kitchen stool at 1 in the morning. A small gray tag, 3 characters, a hyphen, a numeral. SFAR 2, Naomi Reeves looked at it. The room was very quiet. She swiped to the 8th, blur, the 9th. The 9th was Deborah Vance's hand on the mouse, and the cursor on the screen, and the field where that little gray tag had been. Empty, gone, cleared, the record clean. 2 seconds between frame 7 and frame 9. Naomi went back to 7. Then 9, 7, 9 there. Gone. What is that? That's not a security designation. I know every security designation, TSA, doesn't live in carrier's own record field like that. And it's not a system flag either, because system flags don't get taken off by hand by a 52-year-old woman with a mouse. Somebody put that there. Somebody put that there. And somebody takes it off. And then the last thought came, and it came the way cold water comes all at once. Everywhere. The binder. The $4 gray binder under the counter that isn't a computer. Naomi Reeves sat in an 11 by 9 room with a red wax envelope in front of her and a photograph of her own name on a phone in her lap, and she thought about 3 lines from a stranger on a Monday night. There's a list at Halloran. It isn't in any handbook. Nobody who's on it knows. She had come here to find out whether there was a list. She had not at any point, in any version of this, considered the possibility that she was already on it. The door opened at 10:36. Deborah Vance stood in it with her reading glasses pushed up on her head and a smile like a light coming on in an empty room. "Ms. Reeves, I am so sorry. Systems issue, completely on our end. We've got it straightened out. They're holding the door for you. Come with me and we'll walk you right down." Naomi did not move. "How long has it been there?" she said. The smile stayed exactly where it was. "I'm sorry. The left on my record. Nothing. Not a flicker. 26 years. Ma'am, they really are holding the aircraft." And Naomi Reeves stood up, slow, and picked up the envelope she had not opened, and slid it into a scuffed navy bag and put the strap over her shoulder. She looked at the woman in the doorway a long moment. "Then let's not keep them," she said. They walked out into the corridor, past the supply closet, past the door marked crew, back onto the marble, and behind them, the gray door with no window in it swung shut on an empty room with a camera in the corner that had never been turned on. Down at the end of the jet bridge, 138 people sat in seats with their belts fastened, waiting, and every last one of them was about to watch her walk on. The jet bridge was cold. They always are. Nobody tells you that. You spend all that money on a seat up front, and the last 40 feet of your walk to it happen inside a corrugated tube with a rubber floor and a draft coming up off the tarmac, and no airline in the history of American aviation has ever thought to fix it. Deborah Vance walked her down. That was a choice, too. She could have handed Naomi off at the podium, pointed and said, "Right down there, ma'am," and gone back to her operations desk and her $4 binder. Instead, she walked the whole way, half a step ahead and half a step to the left, hands loose at her sides, chin up. At the aircraft door, she said something quiet to the woman standing there in the slate blue jacket. Naomi couldn't hear it. She heard the shape of it, though. The way you tell somebody about a package that's been delivered. Then Deborah Vance turned and said, "Have a wonderful flight, Ms. Reeves," with a warmth that would have fooled anybody on this earth who had not just spent 24 minutes in a room with no window. And she was gone. Here's what 138 people look like aboard their aircraft. They've been sitting for 22 minutes. They look up. All of them. Not dramatically. Just the slow, synchronized lift of 138 faces coming off 138 phones, because the door finally closed behind somebody, and that somebody is the reason. Naomi came through the galley curtain with her scuffed navy bag in her hand. Row 1. Row 2. The cabin lead was standing at the front with a service tablet against her hip. 34, maybe. Blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Lipstick the color of a brick. A name tag that read K. Brandt. 2C, Naomi said. Kayla Brandt looked at her, not at her face. That's the thing. She looked at the bag first, then the shoes, then somewhere around Naomi's collarbone, and she said, "Azel on your right," in the voice of a woman reading a fire exit placard. That was it. No hand toward the seat. No offer for the bag. Naomi lifted her own bag into the bin. She sat down in 2C. Buckled her belt, folded her hands, and 40 rows behind her, somebody said something, and somebody else laughed, and the door thumped shut, and the whole aluminum tube began to pressurize with the specific staleness of an airplane that has sat too long with too many people breathing in it. 22 minutes. That's what she'd cost them, and every passenger on that aircraft now had a face to hang it on. The man in 2D was already annoyed before she ever got there. You could tell. He had the posture. "I have been inconvenienced, and I intend to be a person about it." 50s. A suit that fit him the way a good suits, which is to say it didn't look like a suit at all. It looked like weather. He'd built a small country in that seat while he waited. Newspaper folded into quarters, phone face down. A glass of something clear with 2 ice cubes in it, which meant somebody had served him before the door closed, which meant he was known. Naomi sat. He didn't look at her for a solid 90 seconds. Then he did. Slow drag from the shoes on up, the bag she'd just stowed, the turtleneck, the bare earlobes, and he made a sound, not a word. A little exhalation through the nose, half a laugh. The sound of a man setting down a very small suitcase of opinion. Naomi's looked straight ahead. The safety video started. Somebody's animated family cheerfully surviving a water landing, and the man in 2D said, Zach, at a volume calibrated, exactly, to reach row 3 and no farther. Guess anybody can buy their way up here now. Row 3 heard it. Naomi felt them hear it. That little stillness of a woman 2 seats back, deciding not to turn a magazine page. She counted to 3. Then she turned her head and looked at him, full on, straight in the eye the way you're not supposed to on an airplane. Sir. Do you think money is what's hard to get? He blinked. I'm sorry, you said anybody can buy their way up here. Calm. Almost pleasant. I'm asking you a real question. Out of everything a person needs to sit in this seat, do you honestly believe the money is the hard part? His mouth, nothing came out of it. Because there's no answer to that question. There's a defensive one, and there's a confessional one, and both are catastrophic. And he was a man who had gotten where he was by never once saying a sentence he couldn't take back. He turned to his newspaper. He did not turn a page for the next 9 minutes. Naomi knew, because she counted. Service started at cruise. She watched it happen the way you watch a machine you've been hired to inspect. Kayla Brandt came up the aisle with the warm towels, little silver tongs. A smile you could hang in a gallery. Good morning, welcome back. Same as last time? You know me too well, that's the job. Laughter. Warm, real, even. And that surprised Naomi a little, because Kayla Brandt was genuinely good at this. There was nothing mechanical about her. She remembered faces. She leaned in when people talked. She had the thing that cannot be taught, where a person makes you feel like you're the reason they came to work. 1A, 1B, in 2A, 2B, 2D. Another one of those for you? And then the cart moved forward, past 2C, not around it, not with an apology or an I'll be right back with you, ma'am. The tongs never came out, the eyes never came over. Kayla Brandt moved from 2D to 3A the way a person steps over a crack in a sidewalk without deciding to and without noticing. Naomi sat in seat 2C with her hands in her lap. She'd known it was coming. She'd have bet money on it. She had literally, on Monday night in her socks, built an experiment whose entire purpose was to produce this exact moment so she could write it down. And it still landed. That's the thing nobody tells you about walking into it on purpose. Knowing doesn't make it not hurt. It just means you don't get to be surprised. All right, she thought, write it down. She opened the Notes app and typed with her thumbs in the flattest sentences she could build. SVC Round 1. Cabin Lead K. Brandt. 1A, 1B, 1D, 2A, 2BD. Served, not foul, not offered beverage. No verbal contact. Elapsed 9 min. Then she read what she'd written. Elapsed 9 minutes. 9 minutes of a woman with silver tongs walking past you like you're a coat somebody left on a chair. She turned the phone face down on her knee. Outside the window, the country went by at 500 miles an hour. Brown. Gridded. Enormous. An hour and 20 minutes in, Kayla Brandt came and stood at her elbow. Ms. Reeves? Naomi looked up. Ma'am, I need to move you to a seat in the back. It's a weight and balance issue. She said it at full volume, not a shout, cabin volume. The volume you use for doors to arrival and cross-check, the volume that reaches row 4. And Naomi Reeves sat there a second and let it be quiet. Because there are moments, and if you live long enough, you get maybe 6 of them, where you can feel a door swing open in front of you, and you can feel exactly how many people are watching, and you understand with total clarity that whatever you say next is the thing you are going to be. She had stood in a parking garage once for 40 minutes with her keys in hand, and not this time. Weight and balance, Naomi said. Yes, ma'am. On a Boeing 737 that has been in the air for an hour and 20 minutes. Pause. Yes, ma'am. With fuel burning off the wings the whole time. Ma'am, it's a standard. Then why am I the only person being moved? And the cabin went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence with weight in it, where you can hear the air system and somebody's headphones leaking 8 rows back, and the small plastic tick of a tray table latch. Kayla Brandt's face did something complicated. The distribution is calculated by seat, Naomi said. It's calculated by seat. So if this airplane is out of balance, moving one person from 2C to the back changes it by what? 140 pounds? On a machine that weighs 150,000? Nothing. Ms. Brandt, I'll go anywhere you tell me to go. I want you to understand that. If the captain of this aircraft has a safety reason for me to sit somewhere else, I will get up right now and I won't say another word about it. She let it sit. But I want it from the flight deck, and I want it in the log, that's all. Silence. Kayla Brandt stood in the aisle of her own cabin in front of 11 passengers who were all, every one of them, pretending to read. The man in 2D had gone the color of oatmeal, and somewhere behind them a woman's voice, older, southern, no idea whose, said very clearly, just that, And Kayla Brandt said, "I'll check with the flight deck," and turned and walked to the front of the cabin and pulled the galley curtain closed behind her. She did not come back. Not once for the remaining hour and 30 minutes of that flight. Nobody moved Naomi Reeves. Somewhere over the high desert, she opened her secure work client and started causing a message to Harold Stain. She got as far as Harold. Halloran is worse than an anomaly. Recommend we and stopped. Because she looked at the words recommend we and something about them went sour in her mouth. Recommend what? Recommend we look into it. Recommend enhanced monitoring. Recommend a follow-up engagement next cycle, which happens in as 11 months, by which time the money's out the door and the file's closed and nobody remembers the name of the station. You have 2 days, and you don't have one single thing that isn't a story. She deleted it, opened the photograph instead. Frame 7, the gray-blue screen, the smeared name, the small tag underneath, SFR2. She zoomed until it came apart into squares. Somebody typed that. A human being with a keyboard and a payroll number and a mother somewhere typed 5 characters onto my name and took them back off in 2 seconds when it stopped being convenient. She put the phone in her lap and shut her eyes and did not sleep the rest of the way. 2 hours and 51 minutes in the air, and she landed at 12:31 in the afternoon. That's the trick of flying west. You spend 3 hours and it costs you 2. Seattle was doing the thing where it isn't raining so much as the air has simply given up. The jet bridge here was cold, too. Naomi came up it with her bag and her coat over her arm, thinking about a rental car and a hotel and 1,100 pages of operating procedure, and then she came out into the gate area. And there were 3 people waiting, not for the flight, for her. You can always tell. Nobody waiting on a passenger stands like that. The woman in front was around 50. Dark red hair, cut at the jaw. Navy suit, no jewelry but a wedding band. Flat shoes because she'd been standing a while and knew she'd be standing longer. A leather folio under one arm. She was all booming before Naomi cleared the door. Mrs. Reeves. Yes. Elaine Prosser. General Counsels for Kestrel Air. Handshake. Firm, brief, done. I'm sorry to meet you like this. We have a room downstairs. Can I take your bag? No, thank you. That's fine. Third person today, Naomi thought. Third person today who's offered to carry my bag, and third time I've said no. They walked. Prosser talked while they walked, and every sense was a gift with a hook in it. I want to say up front that Kestrel takes this extraordinarily seriously. I've pulled the station logs. I've got the cabin service record. I've requested the concourse video, which is airport-owned, so it takes a subpoena or a cooperation letter, and I've started the cooperation letter. That's fast. I've been doing this 19 years, down an escalator, through a door that took a badge, along a corridor with the same industrial tile as Halloran, because there are maybe 4 companies in America that sell tile to airports and they all sell the same one. How did you know I was on that flight? Naomi said. Prosser didn't break stride, because at 11:22 this morning, the ground services supervisor at Halloran filed an incident report noting a documentation review of an Ashgrove Trust employee. Beat. Ms. Reeves, your name's been on our vendor access list for 6 years. It's the first thing that comes up. Naomi stopped walking. Say that again. Prosser turned. She filed a report at 11:22. Yes, after that aircraft was airborne. And Elaine Prosser, to her enormous credit, did not blink and did not lie and did not pretend she didn't understand. Yes, she said, after. The 2 of them stood in that corridor and looked at each other for 3 full seconds. She knows, Naomi thought. She already knows exactly what she's holding. She's known since noon. So why is she being kind to me? The room downstairs had a long table in it and 4 chairs and a conference phone in the middle like a spider. Prosser sat, opened the folio, took out a legal pad and didn't write on it. Reeves, before we go any further, I need to raise something. I'd rather do it now than let you build a house on sand. Go ahead. You were recording. Naomi said nothing. In the lounge and in the ready room. I'm not guessing. Your intake filing with your own firm at 1406 today references. And I'm quoting the field. Contemporaneous audio. She turned the pad around. She'd written the phrase out in block capitals. You filed that from the aircraft. Kestrel is a party to Ashgrove's monitoring protocol, so your intake feed copies to our compliance inbox. Automatically, it's in the credit agreement. Naomi's stomach went down 2 floors. Oh, you fool. Section 9, Prosser said. And there it was. Section 9 of the monitoring protocol annexed to the facility. Any on-site observation of borrower personnel shall be conducted with prior notification to station leadership, save where the lender's board has authorized covert review by written resolution. She looked up. Did your board authorize a covert review? Silence. Miss Reeves, did you notify the station? No. Did you notify anyone at Kestrel that you were coming? No. Did your board pass this resolution? Naomi looked at the phone in the middle of the table. No, she said. Prosser nodded, slow. And she wasn't gloating. That was the horrible part. If anything, she looked tired. Then everything you gathered today is outside protocol. All of it. The audio. Any images? Your own observations as an undisclosed participant. A small breath. If any of it goes into your report, we don't have to argue about whether it's true. We file a procedural objection. The finding gets pulled for review, the tranche's decision gets tabled, and the facility goes into technical default on Monday morning. That's a threat. That's arithmetic. And now Prosser leaned forward. Mrs. Reeves, I'm not going to insult you. I would like you to walk out of here with something. But I'm telling you what this company does if you go that way, because I'm the one who'd have to do it, and I've read your file, and I don't believe you want to be the reason 12,000 people find out about a technical default on a Monday. Naomi sat very still. She's right. That's what's obscene about it. She is completely right. You built a perfect instrument, and you forgot to plug it in. 9 years ago, a judge took 940 people and turned them into 940 separate problems with one word, and Naomi had stood in a parking garage thinking I did not everything right and it didn't matter. This was worse. This time she hadn't done everything right. She'd been so busy being the bait that she forgot to be the lawyer. Mrs. Reeves, I hear you. I want to be clear that I am not asking you to find nothing. Then what are you asking? Prosser closed the folio. I'm asking you to find it the right way, she said. Because if you find it the wrong way, it doesn't get fixed, it gets litigated, and you know exactly how long that takes. She got to the hotel at 3, sat on the end of the bed with her coat still on for 11 minutes, then took the recorder out of her bag and set it on the nightstand and looked at it. Small, flat, black. Knifer says 9 hours on it, from the eucalyptus to the marble, to is this a random check or did somebody request it? And every second of it was now worth precisely nothing. She didn't delete it. She was never going to delete it. Some part of her that had never gotten out of that parking garage refused, absolutely refused. Would not put a thumb on that button, but she put it in the drawer, and she closed the drawer. And she sat in a hotel room in a city she didn't live in, 41 hours from a vote, with a suspended reservation on the whole architecture of her career, and she did not open her laptop, because there was nothing in it. She had a story about a Wednesday, and a story is one woman, and one woman is arguable. She lay back on top of the covers with her shoes on. Daddy, I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm apologizing for. I think I'm apologizing for coming. Kayla Brandt was in the lobby at 8:10 the next morning, Thursday. Naomi came out of the elevator with her laptop bag, and there she was, standing by a fake ficus, in jeans and a fleece with her hair down. And without the uniform and the brick lipstick, she looked about 12 years younger and completely undone. Mrs. Reeves. Naomi stopped. Miss Brandt. I know I'm not supposed to talk to you. You are really not. Yeah. One syllable of a laugh with nothing in it. Legal? Called me at 6 this morning and used the word unadvisable about 9 times. So why are you here? And Kayla Brandt said, because I've been up all night and I'm not sorry, and I want to know why I'm not sorry. Naomi looked at her, then pointed at 2 chairs by the window. They sat. The hotel restaurant was doing its terrible morning business behind them. Somebody's blender. The smell of a chafing dish full of eggs that had been eggs for a while. Say it, Naomi said. There was no weight and balance issue. I know. I made it up. I know that too. Kayla's jaw worked. I've been flying 11 years. I have never made something up like that. Not once. And I did it yesterday at 36,000 feet in front of my whole cabin. And I have been trying since about 2 in the morning to find the moment where I decided to. And she stopped. Started over. There isn't one. That's what I can't. There's no moment. I just did it. Who told you to? Nobody. Ms. Brandt? Nobody. Her voice cracked on it. That's what I'm telling you. Nobody called me. Nobody said a word. I got the manifest, and there was a line in the ops comment field that said 2C reviewed at gate monitor, and that was all it said. And I have gotten notes like that maybe 40 times in 11 years, and every single time it means the same thing. Which is this one's going to be trouble, don't let it become a thing. Naomi sat with that a second. And if it becomes a thing, then I write a report. And? Kayla Brandt looked at her, and then she said it, and it's 35% of my number. Naomi went very still. Say that again. Cabin harmony. Kayla wiped under her eye with the heel of her hand, fast, embarrassed. It's the biggest single line in the quarterly. 35%. They measure escalation events. Per 100 segments defines escalation event. Any incident that generates a written complaint, or a crew report, or a diversion, or a request for ground assistance at the gate. She shrugged, and the shrug was the worst part of it. That's it. That's the whole measure. Naomi was already reaching for her bag. She pulls the laptop out right there in a hotel lobby chair with a blender going somewhere behind her and opened the document she'd been 1,100 pages into on Monday night and typed Harmony into the search field, 213 pages in. Appendix D, Cabin Lead Quarterly Incentive Structure, a table, on-time performance, 20%, product compliance, 20%, customer verbatim scores, 25%. And then a line item at 35%, the heaviest weight on the page, with a name that had obviously been focus grouped by somebody's marketing department. Cabin Harmony Index. Naomi read the definition twice. Then she turned the laptop around so Kayla could see it. Have you ever read this? I've seen the number on my statement. That's not what I asked. No, quiet. Nobody reads Appendix D. I do. Naomi turned it back. It's my whole job. And then she sat there in a hotel tall combi chair, looking at a table in a document, and the thing arrived all at once, the way cold water arrives. So a cabin lead's biggest bonus lever isn't service, it isn't safety, it isn't one single thing about how a human being is treated. It's whether anybody wrote anything down. They pay her for silence. Which means if you're a cabin lead, and somebody boards your aircraft with a note on the manifests saying the station thought she was a problem, the cheapest possible thing you can do, the single cheapest action in the entire universe of things available to you, is move her to the back. Not because you hate her, because a quiet cabin is worth $800 a quarter and you have a car payment. Naomi closed the laptop. Miss Brandt, yeah, I'm going to ask you something else can absolutely refuse. In 11 years, how many people have you moved? Silence. Long. I don't know. Guess. I don't want to guess. Guess anyway. And Kayla Brandt said more than one. And then she put her hand over her mouth, like a woman who has just heard her own voice played back at a hearing. Naomi watched her. Watched a 34-year-old woman sit in a hotel lobby chair at 8:10 in the morning and arrive at the far side of something. And here is the thing Naomi Reeves would think about for a long while afterward, and would try to explain to people, and would mostly fail to. She had wanted to hate her. She had gotten on that airplane, braced to hate her, had sat through a service round with her hands folded, and a cold place forming under her sternum, and had honestly, sincerely wanted the story to be that Kayla Brandt was a bad woman who did a bad thing. Because that story is clean. Because in that story you fire one person and the airplane gets better, Mrs. Brandt. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you it's all right, it isn't, and aviation isn't the worst thing that ever came off that policy. Not by a mile. Because I got off that airplane and went to a hotel, and somebody else got off that airplane and went home and had to explain to somebody why they'd been moved. Kayla nodded, fast, wiping her face with the flat of her hand. But I'll tell you what I think, Naomi said. I think somebody built a machine that pays you to be quiet. She stood up and then acted shocked when the room got quiet. The call came at 11:40. She was sitting in the rental car in a parking structure with the engine off, going through a document request list, and the phone buzzed with a Halloran area code, and she picked it up without thinking. This is Naomi Reeves, nothing. Then a breath. Mrs. Reeves, this is Jarrett Boyd. I'm the gate agent from yesterday. Naomi sat up, Mr. Boyd. I got suspended this morning. The parking structure went very far away. Say that again. Suspended pending investigation. Effective immediately. No pay. Turn in the badge. His voice was the thing where a person is being extremely calm on purpose. They pulled the access logs, ma'am. What access logs? Records queries. Every time you open a passenger record, it writes a line. Who looked, what they looked at, what time. A pause. And they went back, and they found that on Sunset night pulled about 260 records that weren't on any flight I was working. Naomi closed her eyes. Sunday night. The night before he wrote to me. Mr. Boyd, I want to be clear that I did that. Fast. Almost proud. I'm not saying I didn't. I did it. I sat there after my shift and went through and pulled everybody who'd had a secondary at our station in the last 4 months, and I put it in a spreadsheet. Because I'd been asking about it for 2 months, and every time I asked, somebody told me it was above my grade. Why did they pull the logs? Silence. Mr. Boyd, why did they pull the logs today? And Jarrett Boyd said, because there's a review open on the station now. Naomi put her forehead against the steering wheel. There it was, beginning to end, one clean line, and the line ran directly through her. She had filed her intake at 14:06 on Wednesday from an airplane. Observed event, Gate Agent J. Boyd conducted secondary boarding pass scan at 09:58. Agent demonstrated evidence. Agent stated, it happens. She had typed his name into a compliance record, because that is what you do. That is correct procedure. You identify participants by name and role, and she had done it without a half-second's hesitation, the way you signs a check. And Kestrel's compliance office had received it automatically, under the same clause that had killed her recording. And somebody had gone looking for what J. Boyd knew, and found Sunday. Miss Reeves, you still there? I'm here. I'm not calling to. He stopped. I'm not asking you for anything. I know how it works. 6 months in probationary, no union voice till 12 months. There's nothing anybody can do. Mr. Boyd, ma'am, I'm the reason. Pause, I know, he said. And that flat, gentle 12-year-old went through Naomi Reeves like a wire. I'm going to fix this. Please don't say that. Excuse me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't mean any disrespect. I mean it kindly. A breath. But people have been saying that to my family my whole life. He hung up. Naomi sat in the parking structure with a dead phone in her hand. Then she opened the door and got out and walked 10 feet and stood facing a concrete wall and pressed the heels of both hands against her eyes, and for about 40 seconds made no sound at all. Harold Stain called at 1:15. She almost let it go. Harold, where are you? Seattle. I know you're in Seattle. I can see the expense report. I mean, where are you on this? Working. Elaine's pa called me. Naomi looked out the windshield at nothing. Did she? At 8 o'clock this morning. And she was extremely polite, which, as you know, is how you can tell. Papers moving. Stain always sounded like he was in the middle of moving papers. Naomi, tell me you did not run an unnoticed on-site. I ran an unnoticed on-site. Oh, for the love of Harold. Do you understand what you handed them? I understand exactly what I handed them. I've understood it since 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and I do not need it explained to me by a man in a chair in Seattle. She let that sit. What do you want? Long pause. And then Harold Stain's voice changed. It got quieter and slower, and it stopped sounding like a man managing you. That was the part that frightened her. I want you to write it as a pass with remediation. Naomi said nothing. Enhanced monitoring, a corrective action plan. Third-party review at 90 days. It's a finding, Naomi. It's got teeth. It puts that station under a microscope for a year. And it releases the tranche. Harold, Naomi, why does Ashgrove care whether the tranche releases? Silence. Real silence of a length she had not once in 6 years heard out of Harold Stain. Harold, there's a position. Naomi went cold all over. Say it in English. Ashgrove holds equity. Through Kelsey Ridge Partners. Its legacy sub-fund, it came over in the 19 acquisition, and nobody's unwound it, because unwinding it is a nightmare. He exhaled. 2.1% of Kestrel Air, common. We are, on paper, both the reviewer and a shareholder. You're joking. I'm not. 6 years. Her voice just didn't rise. It went flat and quiet, which was worse. 6 years I have been signing my name to independent certifications on this file, which were accurate to the best of your knowledge. Because you didn't tell me. Because it's held 2 entities down and it does not hit your disclosure screen. That's not a conspiracy, Naomi. That's a database. Naomi, don't you dare tell me a conflict of interest is a database. Nothing on the line but breathing. Then Stain said, you want the honest part, or you want to keep swinging. Give me the honest part. The honest part is I've been doing this 22 years, and I have watched what happens when a lender fails a borrower on a governance 4 days before a draw. A pause. They don't fix it. Nobody has ever fixed it. The facility freezes, the ratings agencies move inside a week, the aircraft lessors call. And then a company that employs 12,000 people has a very quiet meeting on a Sunday and announces something on a Tuesday. So we protect them by not telling the truth about them. We protect 12,000 paychecks by writing a finding that survives contact with reality. And the 2.1%. The 2.1%, Stain said, is why I can't be the one who says this to you and be believed. I'm aware of that. I've been aware of it since 8 this morning. Naomi sat there. Out past the windshield, a man in a fluorescent vest was pushing a train of luggage carts, and she watched him do it, and she thought about how many people it takes to move one airplane and how not one of them is ever in the room. And if I write it as a fail, then it goes to the board Friday with my recommendation against it, Stain said. And if the board goes with you, fine, and if they don't, they'll ask somebody else to sign the file. There it was, softly, almost apologetically. But there, who, Naomi said. Does it matter? It matters to me. Then no, Stain said. It doesn't need to be any in particular, that's the whole point. Nobody has to be a villain. Somebody just has to be available. Yes, she had the address in her bag since Monday night. It was in the complaint file, the way a home address is always into complaint file, sitting there in a public record. Because filing a grievance in this country means handing over your street. V. Ruddick. Complaint 1944-71. Filed 19 months ago. Passenger removed from priority boarding line at Halloran International for supplementary verification. Missed connection. 11 hours in a terminal. Status. Closed. No finding. The house was in a neighborhood south of the city where the trees were older than the houses. Small. Blue. A wheelchair ramp built onto the front steps out of good lumber by somebody who knew what they were doing. And a hanging basket by the door that somebody was still watering. Naomi sat in the rental 4 minutes before she got out. No evidence, no boss, no time. And you're about to knock on a stranger's door and ask her to bleed for you. Yes, just so we're clear about what this is. It took a while. The woman who opened the door was 68 years old and about 5'2", in a house dress, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a paperback in one hand with her finger holding the place. Miss Ruddick? That's right. My name is Naomi Reeves. I'm with Ashgrove Trust. You're with the money. Naomi stopped. Yes, ma'am. That's about right. Verna Ruddick looked at her a second, then looked past her at the rental car in the street and at the sky, which had started doing its thing again. You'd best come in before it gets going. The front room had a smell Naomi hadn't smelled in 6 years, and it took her 4 steps to place it, lemon oil, on real wood furniture. Her grandmother's front room. Exactly. Down to the plastic runner on the carpet by the door, and the framed photograph of us climbing the wall by the stairs in the order the people were born. Verna Ruddick sat down in a recliner and set the paperback on the arm of it, face down, still holding the place. Sit down then. Naomi sat. You want coffee? Thank you. Good. I wasn't going to make any. Deadpan. Absolutely flat. You said Ashgrove. That's the bank people. We're a trust. We hold the loan Castrel Air is running on. Zimmer's Ruddick, 19 months ago you filed a complaint about, I know what I filed. Silence, rain starting on the window. Yes, ma'am. You want to hear about it? I do. Why? And Naomi Reeves, who had rehearsed 6 versions of an answer to that question in a rental car for 4 minutes, opened her mouth and heard herself give the true one. Because the same thing happened to me yesterday. Verna Ruddick's head came up. She looked at Naomi over the top of her glasses. Really looked. The way you look at a wall, you're deciding whether to hang something on. Where? Halloran. First-class lounge. They put you in the little room? Naomi's chest did something. Yes, ma'am. With the camera up in the corner that don't work. Yes, ma'am. And Verna Ruddick sat back in her recliner and said nothing for 15 seconds, and outside the rain came on properly, and the room got dimmer. I was going to see my sister, she said, Elizabeth. She'd had the first surgery, and they were doing the second one on a Thursday, and I had a ticket for the Tuesday. Yes, ma'am. 31 years I carried mail. You know what that does to a woman's feet? Naomi almost said something. She didn't. 31 years. Hangar 4. So I don't stand if I can sit, Verna said. That's why I paid for the front. My husband's insurance. That's what it went to. So a seat where I could put my feet up and get there without being a mess. 67 years old, and it was the first time in my life I ever bought a ticket like that. She adjusted the glasses. And I got in that line, and a young man came and asked to see it. And then a lady came and asked to see it again. And then they walked me down that hallway. How long? 2 hours and 10 minutes. Did anybody tell you why? They told me it was a systems thing. A short, dry sound. Same as they told us. It's always a systems thing, never a person thing. Did you make your flight? No. Flat. Missed it. Missed the connection. Sat in that terminal from 10 in the morning till 9 at night. A pause. They put me on the last one out, in the back. Naomi sat with her hands on her knees. Mrs. Ruddock, I'd like to ask you, Elizabeth passed. Naomi stopped. Not from that surgery she came through that one fine. It was the March after. Verna's voice did not change at all. That was the worst of it. It did not change 1 degree. But I had 2 days with her that week instead of 3. And I have thought about that Wednesday more than I have thought about nearly anything in my life. And I want you to understand, it isn't the room I think about. It's that I apologized. Rain on the window, when they finally let me out. There was a young man at the desk, and I said, and she said it in a small, polite voice, and it was the most terrible sound Naomi'd heard in 9 years. I'm so sorry for the trouble. Naomi couldn't speak. 67 years old, 31 years of federal service. Never had so much as a parking ticket. Verna folded her hands, and I stood there and apologized to them. Mrs. Ruddock, that's why I'm here. Your complaint was closed with no finding. I want to reopen it. I want to put it in front of a board tomorrow morning with your name on it. And I want to say what actually, no, happened. I said no. Naomi stopped. Verna Ruddock was sitting very straight in her recliner with both hands flat on the arms of it. I signed a paper, she said, an agreement, $4,000 and a paper, and a woman on the telephone who was very nice about it. She nodded at nothing. 13 months ago, I paid to have that ramp put on, bought a chest freezer, put the rest in the account. Mrs. Ruddock, those agreements are frequently unenforceable, and if we... Mrs. Reeves. Ma'am, sit still a minute. Naomi sat still. You come to my house on a Thursday, Verna Ruddock said, with your rental car and your nice coat. 1 day before some meeting of yours. And what you want, and I'm not being ugly with you, child. I'm 68 years old, and I have earned the right to say a thing plain. What you want is for me to stand up in front of a table full of people in Seattle and tell them how it felt when I apologized. Naomi's throat closed. You're going to give me my dignity back, Verna said, by making me tell it again, the rain, the lemon oil, the paperback vase last down on the recliner, still holding the places. I hadn't thought about it that way, Naomi said. No, you hadn't. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Verna Ruddock reached over and picked up her books and set it in her lap, and it was clear to both of them that this was the end of it, and neither of them moved for a while anyway. Can I say one more thing? Naomi said. You can say it. I don't need you to testify. I mean that. If you tell me no today, that's no, and I'll never call you again. A breath. But if you ever want that paper you signed to be worth nothing, I'd like to be the one who tears it up. Verna Ruddock looked at her over the glasses. Now that, she said, is a different question than the one you came in here with. Yes, ma'am. You take the umbrella by the door. What? Bring it back or don't. The Sansows sat in the rental outside the little blue house at 3:10 in the afternoon with a borrowed umbrella on the passenger seat and rain coming down on the roof like gravel. She had nothing. Let's just say it plainly, the way she said it to herself. No recording. No photographs you can use. A whistleblower, you got suspended. A cabin lead who came to you off the record and would be fired inside a day of putting any of it on paper. A complainant with a signed release and every right on earth to keep her front door closed. Your boss's firm owns 2% of the company you're reviewing. Your report is due at 11 o'clock tonight, 17 hours. You came in as bait and you got eaten. She put both hands on the wheel, and then sitting there, she heard Verna Ruddock's voice again. And it wasn't the part about apologizing. It was the other part. It's always a systems thing, never a person thing. Naomi went absolutely still. Say that again, because it was true. That was the excuse. That was the phrase they reached for at the desk, the phrase Deborah Vance used in the lounge, the phrase somebody said to a 67-year-old woman with her sister in surgery. It's a systems thing, and a system does one thing a person never does. A system counts. Naomi Reeves sat up in the driver's seat and hauled the lap open on the passenger seat beside a stranger's umbrella and pulled up the facility agreement, the whole 400-page monster, and went to a schedule she had read 40 times in 6 years and had never once actually needed. Schedule 4. Information covenants. Borrower shall, upon written request of the lender's compliance function and within 24 hours, furnish operational data in aggregate form, including not limited to on-time performance, denied boarding, mishandled baggage, and there, right there. In a subs clause nobody in the history of that document had ever read out loud. Secondary verification referrals, by station, by month. Naomi stared at it. I don't need a recording. I don't need a witness. I don't need Werner Ruddick to sit in front of 9 people and tell them how it felt to say, I'm so sorry for the trouble. I don't need one single human being to bleed. I need 19 months of numbers. And Kestrel Air is contractually obligated to hand them over inside 24 hours. And Elaine Prosser, polite, thorough 19 years. This Elaine Prosser has no ground on God's green earth to refuse. She started typing. Typed for 11 minutes with the rain coming down and the wipers off and the windows going white. And when she finished, she read it twice and sent it at 3:29 in the afternoon on Thursday to the General Counsel of Kestrel Air, copy to the board secretary, then closed the laptop and said, out loud, in front of a small blue house with a good wooden ramp on it, count it. The report was due at 11 o'clock at night and Naomi Reeves filed it at 10:58. 4 pages. 3 of them were the standard architecture, scope, methodology, control environment, the kind of language that exists so nobody ever has to say a sentence out loud. The 4th page had 1 paragraph on it, determination deferred. Reviewer has requested production under Schedule 4 of operational data material to the finding. Until such data is produced and analyzed, no opinion can be rendered on the adequacy of the borrower's passenger service control environment. Reviewer notes for the record that the borrower's production window under Schedule 4, C, expires at 5:29 Friday, 6 hours, and 29 minutes after the board is scheduled to vote. She read it 4 times, then signed it and hit send, and sat back on a hotel bed in Seattle with her shoes still on, because that paragraph was a grenade with the pin in it, and she was the one holding it. There is nothing an institution hates worse than a person who refuses to conclude. They can survive a bad finding. Bad findings get argued about, appealed, remediated, buried in a corrective action plan with a 90-day clock on it. What they cannot survive is a blank space where the answer goes, because a blank space has to be explained. And explaining it means somebody at that table on Friday morning has to say out loud into a microphone in front of a court reporter, we voted anyway. Her phone rang at 11:04. Harold Stain yelled it, let it ring. It rang again at 11:06 and at 11:19 and at 11:41. Then it stopped, and at 11:52 a text came through that said only, you have made this very hard for me. She typed I know and deleted it, typed good and deleted that too. Put the phone face down and lay on top of the covers in her clothes with the lights on, and did not sleep. And somewhere after 1 in the morning, she started thinking about a wooden ramp built onto the front steps of a small blue house by somebody who knew what they were doing. $4,000. They bought 31 years of a woman's dignity for $4,000, and she used it to build a ramp so she could get out of her own house. And I drove over there and asked her to hand it back. The email came in at 2:40 in the morning. Naomi was awake. She'd been awake the whole time, in the way where you can't swear to it afterward. The phone lit the ceiling. Prosper, E. Kestrel Air, Schedule 4C, Production, Halloran Station, 19 months. She sat straight up. That 12 hours early. She opened it with her thumbs going. 4 attachments, a cover letter. And underneath it, at the bottom, 3 lines Ella Prosser had typed herself and had run past nobody, because if she'd run it past anybody, it would not have said this. Ms. Reeves. Production is complete and unredacted. I have not asserted the full window. For the record, I requested that this field be purged in 2021 and again in 2023. Both requests were declined on cost. I kept the memos. I told you to find it the right way. This is the right way. Go find it. Naomi put the phone against her chest and breathed out. Lord have mercy. She's been carrying this for 4 years. She got up, washed her face, put the terrible little pod coffee maker on, the one bolted to the counter, pulled the desk chair over, and opened her laptop at 2:51 in the morning with 6 hours and 9 minutes until the board convened, and started counting. Here's what 19 months of cessation looks like when somebody finally lets you see it. 1,140 rows. Each row a person. Each row a byte number. A referral code, an initiating employee ID, a duration, a disposition. No names because the production was by record locator, which is how it has to be. But everything else was there, everything. Naomi built the first table in 20 minutes. Referrals per 100,000 boardings by station. Kestrel Air ran 34 stations. She ranked them. Halloran was first, not narrowly first. First the way a mountain is first. Halloran conduct secondary verification at 4.1 times the rate of the second-place station and 9 times the system median, and it had done so month after month for 19 straight months, without a single month of variation big enough to be interesting, smooth as a plate, because it isn't behavior. Behavior is lumpy. This is a rule. She built the second table. Disposition. What happened after? Of 1,140 secondary referrals at Halloran Station, the number produced an actual finding of any kind, a documentation problem, a fare irregularity, a real security escalation. Anything on God's earth was 19, 1.7%. Naomi sat back in a desk chair in a hotel room and did the arithmetic out loud because there was nobody to say it to. 1,121 people, she said, for nothing. 1,121 times, he walked down a corridor, past a supply closet and a door marked Tribu. Tacked 1121 times, somebody sat in a room 11 feet by 9 with a camera in the corner that doesn't work. And 1,121 times, a person came in afterward and says it was a systems thing. She got up and walked to the window and stood there a minute looking at a parking garage. Then came back and built the third table. And the third table is where it stopped being a story about an airport. The initiating employee ID column was the thing. Every referral had one. Which terminal generated it? And Naomi had assumed, she'd assumed all night, all week, since a kitchen counter on Monday in her socks, that the number was going to point at a 52-year-old woman with silver hair and 3 service pins on her lapel. It didn't. Deborah Vance's ID initiated 162 of them, 14%. That the rest were spread across 41 other employees, agents, supervisors, 2 people in a back office who had never laid eyes on a passenger in their lives. That's not a woman. One woman cannot be 41 people. So Naomi went and looked at what the terminals were actually responding to, and there, in the 4th attachment, a technical file, a data dictionary, the sort of document that exists in every company on Earth and is read by nobody. She found a field. Field 0447. Legacy indicator. SHAR-5, editable, via passenger service interface. Populated at record creation from associated person table, non-editable. So when Deborah Vance cleared it off my record with a mouse from 40 feet down a corridor, she wasn't deleting it. She was suppressing the display. It's still there. It's on me right now. Naomi's hands went cold on the keyboard. She scrolled valid. SFOF threat 2, station focus referral. See Program Memorandum 44471B 1994. She stopped. Read the number twice. Complaint 19-447T1. Verna Ruddock's file, filed 19 months ago at a counter at Halloran, closed with no finding. Coincidence. It's got to be a coincidence. Those are different systems. That's just a sequential, she kept reading. Memorandum 4471B was in the 4th attachment a scanned image. Somebody at Kestrel Air had photographed a photocopy of a mimeograph at some point in the last 30 years, and the file had traveled server to server, ever since like a stone in a shoe. 2 pages. The header said Kestrel Air, Loss Prevention, Intel, 1994. And the first paragraph said the Station Folks Referral Program is established to address non-revenue travel abuse and station shrinkage at pilot locations. Employees identified by station leadership shall be entered in the focus roster. Associated persons authorized on the employee's travel benefit shall be entered as SFR2. Focus roster travelers shall receive documentation verification at boarding without exception. Naomi read it 3 times, then said in an empty hotel room at 4:11 in the morning, it wasn't for passengers. It was never for passengers. It was for the workers. 1994. 4 pilot locations. A program built to catch mechanics and ramp agents and baggage handlers using their benefits wrong, which meant a list of employees at 4 maintenance bases chosen by station leadership by hand with no written criteria anywhere on this earth. And then this was the part that made her put a hand over her mouth. Associated persons authorized on the employee's benefit shall be entered as SFR2. Their families, their husbands, their wives, their mothers, everybody on the benefit, flagged by relation. Naomi sat in that chair a long moment and did not move at all. Then she picked up her phone and pulled up the photograph she had taken through 6 inches of wire-reinforced glass on Wednesday morning, the one that had cost her a heart waking like a bird in a shoebox, and zoomed in past the point where it broke into squares. Reeves Naomi A. SFR2 associated person, not SFR1, not the employee. Number 2, somebody's family. She found the roster at 440, third attachment, a table nobody had opened since the systems migration. 4,311 names carried forward from 4 stations across 3 decades of Hortgear, and the origin codes still sitting on every one of them like a maker's mark on the bottom of a plate. Naomi did not go looking for her father. She wants that understood, and she said it out loud to people later, more than once, because it mattered to her. She was not hunting him. She had not, in 9 days or 9 years, let that thought all the way to the front of her mind. She sorted by station and scrolled to Halloran, and there they were. Column after column, 680 names attached to one airport, and every one of them with a hangar number beside it, and the hangar numbers ran 1 through 6. And Hangar 4 had more names in it than 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 put together. Hangar 4, airframe and power plant, the heavy maintenance floor, Daddy's hangar. She scrolled slow, and her heart was doing something she'd have been embarrassed to describe, and somewhere around the 4th screen, she stopped with her finger still on the trackpad. Reeves Otis L. HGR4, SFR1, and underneath it, indented, the way a system indents a dependency, Reeves Delores M. SFR2 Reeves name Aves SFR2. Her mother's name in a loss prevention roster in a corporate database with a 1994 date stamp on it, and her own name underneath. Naomi Reeves put both hands flat on the desk on either side of the laptop. The air conditioner cycled on. Somewhere down the hall a door closed and a cart went past, and she sat there and watched. The way you watch a picture you have seen so many times you can say it along with it. A big man in coveralls pull a truck into a driveway and shut off the headlights and sit. 4 minutes, 6 minutes, hands at 10 and 2, Daddy, oh, Daddy. He had taken them on trips. That's what standby benefits are for. That is the entire reason a man works on a hangar floor with his hands inside an engine, so that twice a year he can put his wife and his daughter on an airplane and take them somewhere. Space available, at the back if it goes, and every single time at the counter somebody asked to see it again. Every time. And he never said one word about it. Not once. Not in her whole life. He had walked his family through that airport for years and years with a mark on him he could not see and did not know the shape of, and every time they left the house early, and every time they stood a little longer, and every time he came out the other side of it and put his hand on the back of her neck and said, "All right, let's go find our gate." And every night he came home and sat in a parked truck in his own driveway and took it off himself before he would bring it in the house. Naomi made a sound. She heard it happen. It was not a sound she recognized. She put her forearms on the desk and her forehead on her forearms and cried the way you cry when you are 44 years old and alone in a room and there is nobody to be composed for about 90 seconds. Then she stopped because there were 4 hours and 9 minutes left. She got up, washed her face in cold water, looked at herself in a hotel mirror under the light they use in hotel mirrors, and said out loud to her own face, "Sit up straight, baby. They're watching." She found Gilroy's signature at 6:20. By then she had it all laid out. The 1994 memorandum, the roster, the field, 19 months of rows. And there was exactly one hole in the middle of it, and the hole was shaped like a question a board member was going to ask her at 9 o'clock. If this program is from 1994, why is it still from running? Because programs die. Companies get bought. Systems get replaced. Everything gets thrown out eventually. 1994 was 3 ownership groups and 4 core platforms ago. So Naomi went hunting for the thing that had kept it breathing. She found it in the technical attachment, in an appendix. In the changelog for the 2019 platform migration, 200 pages of the driest reading matter ever produced by the hand of man. And on page 141's an exception, data retention exception, legacy field 0447. Migration vendor recommends deprecation of field 447. Legacy indicator as source program is inactive and provenance documentation is incomplete. Estimated remediation cost to purge and validate, $340,000 over 11 weeks, with attendant risk to migration timeline. Business owner requests retention. Field is reported by station leadership at several locations to be operationally useful in referral targeting. Recommend carry forward with display suppression at agent level. Approved. W. Gilroy, Chief Customer Officer. Naomi stared at it. $340,000. That's the whole thing. That is the entire thing right there. He didn't build it. He didn't write it. He wasn't in the room in 1994 in any way that matters. Some man in an office in 1994 made a list of the men in Hangar 4, and that man is probably dead. Gilroy just got handed an invoice. Somebody put a piece of paper in front of him that said, "Seeing this up costs $340,000 and 11 works weeks, and keeping it costs nothing, and the stations like it." And he signed the cheap one. She looked at 2 words in the middle of that paragraph until they went strange. Operationally useful, not hateful, not vicious, nothing you could put in front of a jury and watch them gasp. Useful. That's how it lives, she thought. That is how a thing from 1994 gets all the way to a Wednesday morning and a room that smells like eucalyptus. Nobody carries it. Nobody has to. It just costs more to put it down than to keep holding it. So everybody keeps holding it. And after 30 years, there is nobody left alive who remembers picking it up. She built the last slots 7:15. Then she showered and put on the charcoal suit, because Wednesday had been the experiment. Wednesday, she had needed to be a woman with a valid ticket and nothing else, so she could measure what a valid ticket was actually worth. Friday was a different animal. Friday, she was going to a table. She put on the suit and the coat, took her mother's pearls out of the box in her bag, fastened them at the back of her neck in a hotel mirror, and looked at herself, Delores M. Reeves. 2. "Morning, Mama," she said. The Ashgrove Trust boardroom sat on the 19th floor and had a view of the water that nobody in it had looked at in a decade. Long table, 9 members. The chair at the head, a woman in her 70s with half glasses and a legal pad she wrote on constantly. Stain along the side, gray-faced, not looking at Naomi. A minute taker. A court reporter, because a deferred determination makes it that kind of meeting. And down at the far end, on the borrower's side, 3 people from Kestrel Air. Elaine Prosser in the same Navy suit, a finance man Naomi had met twice and could not have picked out of a crowd of 2, and Warren Gilroy, 58. He looked like a man who golfed and knew wine and had never once in his life raised his voice because he had never needed to. Silver at the temples, good jaw, the kind of face they put on the annual report. He stood up when she came in and put out his hand. "Mrs. Reeves. Warren Gilroy, I want to say before we start, I've read the intake and I am sick about what happened to you at our station." Naomi shook his hand. "Thank you. I mean that. I believe you do." And she meant that too, which was the sad part. The chair called it at 9:02. "We're on the record. Special session, Kestrel Air Facility, Tranche 4. Ms. Reeves, you filed a deferred determination at 22:58 last night, which I have read twice and did not enjoy." "Do you have a determination this morning?" "I do." "Or then, before you give it, I want it in the minutes that this board does not appreciate being put in a corner." "Yes, ma'am. You have 30 minutes. Naomi stood up, and the first thing she did was open the envelope. She had carried it since Monday. Cream stock, red wax, the Ashgrove crest. Through the lounge in the room with no window and a jet bridge in 2 cities and a small blue house with a ramp on it. And she had never once broken the seal. She broke it now in front of 9 people and slid out a single page and laid it on the table. "Before I present anything," she said, "I need to put something in front of you." "What is it?" "My annual certification of independence on this file, signed by me in January. I sealed it before travel because I intended to enter it into the record at the close of the engagement." She paused. "It's false." The room went very still. Stain closed his eyes. Ashgrove Trust holds 2.1% of Kestrel Air common equity through Kelsey Ridge Partners, a legacy sub-fund acquired in 2019. I did not know that until 1:15 yesterday afternoon. It does not appear on the disclosure screen that generates that certification. And I have signed a dump document in good faith 6 years running. The chair's pen had stopped. "You're telling this board that our reviewer is conflicted." "I'm telling this board that our reviewer was conflicted. Structurally, for 6 years and did not know it." She looked around the table. And I am telling you that first, before I say one word about anybody at Kestrel Air, because in about 10 minutes I am going to stand here and explains how an organization can run a discriminatory program for 31 forces without a single person in it ever deciding to. She let that sit, and I am not going to do that from behind a piece of paper that says I'm clean. Silence. Then from down the table, a board member with his arms folded said, "That's either the most honest thing I've heard in this room or the best piece of theater." "Both are available to you," Naomi said. "The numbers won't care either way," he snorted. The chair wrote something on her pad. "Go ahead, Ms. Reeves." She did not play the recording. It was in her bag. 9 hours of a Wednesday, from the eucalyptus to the room with the dead camera. She had every reason on God's earth to want it, and no legal right to use it, and she left it in the bag. She did not describe what happened to her. She said one sentence about it. "On Wednesday morning, I was removed from a boarding line at Halloran and held in a windowless room for 24 minutes, after which discrepancy was found. And then she turned to the screen and never mentioned herself again, because she had worked something out at 4 in the morning with her forehead on her forearms. A story is one woman, and one woman is arguable. They can say I was rude. They can say I misread it. They can say Ms. Brandt was having a bad day, and I made a federal case out of a bad day. And there will always be somebody at a table who half believes it. So don't give them a woman. Give them a number they can't climb out from under." The first slide was one bar chart, 34 stations, referral rate, and one bar going off the top of the frame like a smokestack. Halloran Station conducts secondary verification at 9 times the rate of the median Kestrel station and 4 times the rate of the next highest. 19 consecutive months. Variance is functionally 0, which is the first thing that should trouble you, because real human behavior is never that smooth. Second slide. 1,140 referrals, 19 findings, 1.8%. She let it stand there. 1,101 people were taken out of line and held an average of 31 minutes for no reason that was ever written down. Third slide. Field 447. Every one of those referrals originated from a terminal responding to a flag in a legacy field. That flag is not editable at agent level and suppressed from display, which means the young man at the podium cannot see it, cannot question it, and cannot remove it. She turned. He can only obey it. Fourth slide. The memorandum, 994. A photocopy of a photocopy. And she watched Gilroy's face while she read it out loud. Watched him hear the phrases non-revenue, travel abuse, and station shrinkage and pilot locations, and his expression did not change 1 degree. And she thought, he knows this document. Then she read the last line. Associated persons authorized on the employee's travel benefit shall be entered as SFR2. And she said, this program was never about passengers. It was about one employees. Kestrel Air in 1912 built a watch list of its own mechanics and ramp workers at 4 maintenance stations, selected by station leadership, no written criteria, no appeal, no notice to the employee. She paused, and then it added their families. The chair said quietly, said part again. It added their families by relation automatically. Anyone on that employee's flight benefit, spouses, parents, adult children, was entered as an associated person and flagged for verification without exception. And the program ended when? Sunset in 1997. No rescission order for system issued. A shield clicked, including this one. Slide 5. The 2019 change log, the exception request, $340,000 to 11 weeks, and at the bottom, blown up 8 inches wide, approved W. Gilroy, Chief Customer Officer. Nobody moved. Elaine Prosser was looking at the table. She's known since 2:40 this morning, Naomi thought. She sent me the rope. Warren Gilroy sat forward and put his hands together. Can I speak to that? The chair said, please. And here is what Naomi Reeves had braced for, and it did not come. He didn't deny it. He didn't reach for a lawyer. He looked at the room and told the truth. And the truth was so much worse than a lie would have been. I remember signing that, Gilroy said. Somebody exhaled. I want to be precise, because I'd rather be hanged accurately than acquitted by accident. He turned a pen over in his fingers. In 2019, we were 11 weeks from a migration cutover with 140 open items. I was approving 40 exceptions a week. That one came to me in a stack with a vendor recommendation to deprecate and a business case to retain. And the business case said $340,000 in a schedule risk. and the station said they used it. He set the pen down. I asked what it was. What were you told? That it was as a legacy loss prevention indicator. Did you ask what generated it? No. Did you ask how his... No, ask whether anybody on it had been notified. And Warren Gilroy said, it did not occur to me that there was anyone on it. Naomi stood very still. Say that again, please. It didn't occur to me that it was people. His voice had gone strange, flat, and careful. A man walking downstairs in the dark. It was a field. It was a column. I have approved 1,100 data exceptions in 6 years, and every one of them is a column. You don't? He stopped. Started over. You do not think of a column as 4,000 human beings. 4,311, Naomi said. Yes, sir. The vendor told you the provenance documentation was incomplete. That's the sentence. Provenance documentation is incomplete. Somebody put in writing that nobody alive could explain where those names came from. And you kept them anyway. Yes, why? And Gilroy looked up at her and said, because it was cheaper, and because somebody at a station told me it was useful, and because on that Tuesday it was item 31 of 40. The court reporter's hands kept going. Naomi stood there with her hand on the back of her chair. You wanted a villain. 9 days ago, in your socks, you wanted a woman with a binder and a bad heart. Then you wanted a cabin lead with a mean streak, and now you want this man to be a monster, and he will not do it for you. He's a manager who signed the cheap option on a Tuesday. That is all any of it has ever been. Mr. Gilroy, she said, I don't think you're a bigot. He blinked. I think that's worse, Naomi said. Because if you were a bigot, we could fire you and go home. At now for 9:41, the door opened. Naomi did not turn around because you don't, but the chair looked up over her half glasses. This is a closed session. And a voice behind Naomi said, my name is Deborah Vance. I'm the ground services supervisor at Halloran. I flew in on the red-eye, and I've been sitting in your lobby since 6. Naomi turned around. She was standing in the doorway in a slate blue jacket with 3 service pins in a vertical line, a gray plastic binder under one arm, and the face of a woman who had been awake for 30 hours. Elaine Prosser came halfway out of her chair. Deborah, as counsel for the company, I need to advise you not to. I know what you need to advise me. You don't have representation in this room. No, I don't. The chair said, Ms. Vance, do you understand this proceeding is on the record? There's a court reporter sitting right there, Deborah Vance said. I've been in this business 26 years. I know what a court reporter is. Then why are you here? And Deborah Vance came into the room and set the binder down on that long table with a flat sound everybody heard. Because Thursday afternoon at 3:30, corporate sent my station the data request that had to be answered by Friday. 1,140 referrals, 19 months. And the digital system only reaches back to the migration. So somebody at that station had to reconcile 5 yards of it by hand. She put her fingertips on the binder. That's me. I'm the only one left who knows where it all is. She wasn't looking at Naomi. She was looking at the wall above the chair's head. So I sat at that desk from 6 o'clock last night until 2 in the morning going through this. And then I got on an airplane. And I want to tell you what's in it. Because it isn't in any computer, and when I retire it goes in a shredder, and nobody on this earth will ever know it existed. The chair said, go ahead. Deborah Vance opened the binder. It's a photocopy, she said, of a photocopy, of a list. I inherited it in 2011 from the man who had my job before me, and he inherited it from the woman before him. It has never been in a handbook. It has never been in a training. There is no policy number on it. First page is instructions. Page 2 through 9 are names. Who told you keep it? Nobody told me anything. It was in the drawer. She said it the way you report the weather. When I came into that job, the man training me pulled the drawer open and said, this is the focus list. You check it against the manifest. That's the whole training. 4 seconds, 14 years ago, and you never asked? I asked once. What were you told? That it was a legacy program. The room was so quiet you could hear the building. Mrs. Vance, the chair said. Why bring it here? And Deborah Vance turned the binder around and put her finger on page 2. Because I have been checking names off this list for 14 years, and I never once read it. She kept her finger there. You don't read a list, you search a list. You come in with a name, and you look for it, and if it isn't there, you close the book. 14 years, 4 seconds at a time. Her voice did something on the last part. Thursday night, I had to add up every mark on every page for the reconciliation, so I read it. front to back, for the first time in my life. Her finger did not move. Page 2, line Ellis, Hangar 4, entered 1996. Naomi's stomach dropped. That's the father, Deborah Vance said, of the 26-year-old boy I see suspended yesterday morning. Nobody said a word. He came into my station 6 months ago, and he asked me twice, politely, both times, why we were pulling so many people at that gate, and I told him it was above his grade. And on Thursday, I signed the paperwork that took his badge. She closed the binder. And that night I sat at my desk and found Daddy's name on page 2 of a list I have been carrying in a drawer for 14 years. She stood there. I'm not here for forgiveness. I don't want anybody's forgiveness, and I wouldn't know where to put it. I'm here because this binder is the only object in the world that connects what happened at my gate on Wednesday to a piece of paper from 1994. And if I carry it back to Halloran, it goes in a shredder inside 6 months, and every one of you gets to say it was a computer problem. She pushed across the table. So it's yours now. They recessed at 10:15. Naomi went out into the corridor and stood by a window with her arms folded, and after a minute Deborah Vance came out and stood about 8 feet away, and neither of them said anything for a while. You held me 24 minutes, Naomi said. I did. Why? You know why. I want to hear you say it. Deborah Vance looked out the window. There's a right answer, she said, and there's a true one. Give me the true one. The true one is I don't know. She said it slowly, like a woman handing over something she'd been holding wrong for years. The system flagged you, and I checked the book, and you weren't in the book. And if you had been standing there in a good coat, I would have cleared you in 4 seconds and told myself the flag was a glitch. I've done that plenty. A pause. But you weren't in a good coat, so I let the flag be right. Naomi didn't say anything. 26 years, Deborah Vance said. You want to know the worst of it? I'd have told you on Tuesday I didn't have a prejudiced bone in my body, and I'd have passed a polygraph. I believe you. I don't want you to. I know, Naomi said, but you're going to have to live with somebody believing you. She gave her recommendation at 10:40, stood up, didn't use the screen. The finding is a fail, Naomi said. Not on service quality, on governance. Kestrel Air operated a passenger targeting mechanism it could not document, could not explain, did not know it had. And when the cost of removing it was calculated, it kept it. That is a control environment failure at the highest level. And there is an honest way to write it as anything else. The chair, so you're recommending we withhold the tranche? No, ma'am. Staines' head came up. Say that again, the chair said. I'm recommending you release it. Somebody at the far end said, what? Naomi put both hands on the back of her chair. There are 12,000 people at that airline. 1,500 of them are on a hangar floor. If you freeze $4.8 billion on a governance finding 4 days, 3 hours, before a scheduled draw, the ratings agencies move in a week lessers call. And I have been told by more than one person in this building that no airline in the history of this country has ever fixed itself under those conditions. They don't fix, they shrink. She looked down the row. And when an airline shrinks, it does not shrink at this table. It shrinks in Hangar 4, where the list came from, where it has always come from. So here's what I want, is it, Naomi? Release it and condition it. One finger. 1. Purge field 0447 and every descendant of it system-wide with independent verification. The 2019 estimate was $340,000. Make it a covenant, not a request. 2. An independent monitor over passenger service governance for FUMSKIF reporting to this board with unrestricted station access. And I want this written specifically, with a requirement that every camera in every secondary screening room at every Kestrel station be operational and recording with retention. Because on Wednesday morning I sat under a camera with the light off, and that is not an accident, and every institution in America knows exactly what it is. 3. Reopen all 1,140 referrals. Written notice to every one of those passengers explaining what was on their record, where it came from, and that it has been removed. Not an apology. A disclosure. 4. Void every non-disclosure agreement it executed in connection with a passenger service complaint at any Kestrel station, retroactively. Unconditionally with written notice to each signatory that they are released and that no repayment is sought. She stopped. That last one isn't for the record, she said. That one's for a woman in her 60s who carried mail for 31 years and signed a paper for $4,000 and used it to build a ramp onto her own front steps so she could get out of her house. The chair was writing fast. And 5, Naomi said. There's a 5. There's a 5. She reached down and ticked up the single page she had taken out of the envelope at the start of the meeting. The false certification, her own signature at the bottom. Kelsey Ridge holds 2.1% of the borrower. That position needs to be unwound, or the review function needs to be walled off from it. And until one of those things happens, no finding this house issues on this file is worth the paper it's printed on. She set it down, and I'm going to give you the smaller version of the same problem. Meaning I intend to recommend a monitor, and I want you to know that I am not available for the appointment. The room stopped. Stain said, Naomi. She didn't look at him. Reeves, the chair said slowly, you are the most qualified person in this building for that seat. You've done the work. You know the file. Frankly, nobody else could take it and be up to speed inside 3 months. Yes, ma'am. You understand that's a 24-month principal engagement. I do. With what I first imagine is fairly significant. I have spent 9 years wanting a job exactly like that one, Naomi said. I want you to hear me say that out loud, because I don't want anybody in this room thinking it's easy or that I'm being noble. I want it. I have wanted something like it since a Tuesday in a parking garage 9 years ago, and I have thought about it more than I would care to tell you. Then why? Because the whole finding is that this company gave one person unreviewed discretion over other people and never checked it again for 31 years. She let it land. If I stand here and prove that, and then take the seat, I'm a woman with unreviewed discretion, appointed by the people she just investigated, employed by a firm that owns 2% of the company she's monitoring. In 18 months, somebody writes a very good article about that, and every single thing on this list gets thrown out with me. She shook her head once. You don't cure a conflict by handing it to somebody with better intentions. That is exactly what 1994 thought it was doing. Silence. Then the board member with the folded arms said to the chair, I withdraw the theater remark. They voted at 11-6, 9-0 on release with conditions, 7-2 on the recusal. 2 members wanted her in the monitor's seat and said so on the record, and Naomi thanked them and did not move. The chair took her half a glasses off. Mrs. Reeves, before we close, for the minutes. She looked the tapeable. Is there anything material to this finding that has not been stated? Naomi thought about it. Yes, my father's name is in that roster. My mother's is under it. Mine is under hers. And it's on my record right now this morning, and it will be until somebody spends $340,000. She thought about it for 4 seconds. She then said, yes, ma'am. My father was a Kestrel airframe mechanic at Halloran for 31 years. His name is on the 1994 roster. So is my mother's. So is mine. She kept her voice level. I found that at 4:40 this morning. I did not know it when I opened the engagement, and I did not know it when I bought the ticket. The chair sat back. Miss Reeves, that's a personal interest in the subject matter. Yes, ma'am, it is. You could have left it out. It's in none of the documents. Nobody would ever have known. No, ma'am, nobody would. Then why say it? And Naomi Reeves said, because the entire problem is that for 31 years, nobody wrote anything down. Warren Gilroy resigned at 4 o'clock that afternoon. He did it before anyone asked him to, which surprised people, and his statement had no lawyers in it, which surprised them more. He wrote that it pre-approved a data retention exception in 2019 without asking what the data was, that 4,311 people had been affected by that decision, and that a company should not be run by a man who requires a public hearing to learn what he approved. The board did not fight it. Elaine Prosser called Naomi that night and said one thing about the whole business. 19 years I've been general counsel, and I have never once been proud of winning a procedural objection. A pause, so I didn't file one. Good night, Ms. Reeves. Jarrett Boyd called her back the following Wednesday. She had called him twice. He'd let both go, and then he rang her at 7 in the evening while she was standing in her own kitchen in her socks, which she noticed and did not think was funny at all. Mrs. Reeves, Mr. Boyd, I got a call this morning. Careful. Testing the ice. Reinstated. Back pay. They're expunging the suspension. I heard. They also offered me a settlement. I heard that too. I turned it down. Naomi closed her eyes. Good, she said. They offered me a seat instead. On some review panel. Frontline position. He half laughed. Everybody's been telling me I'm too junior for it. 3 different people. Same day. You are too junior for it. Ma'am, you're 26 years old, and you're too junior for it, and you should take it anyway, Naomi said. Because the entire reason this happened is that a lot of very senior people never once asked a question a junior person would ask. Silence on the line, Mr. Boyd. I need to tell you something, and I'd rather do it now. Okay, your father's name is on that list. Nothing. For long enough that she checked the screen. Hangar 4? He said. Hangar 4. Entered 96. Another silence. Then Jarrett Boyd said, he always got there 3 hours early. My whole life. 3 hours, every single time. And my mother used to fuss at him about it something terrible. Naomi put her hand flat on her own kitchen counter. So did mine, she said. Ms. Reeves, yes. I said something to you on the phone that I've been thinking about. You said people had been telling your family they'd fix it your whole life. Yeah, you were right to say it. I know I was right. A breath. I still wish I'd said it kinder. Mr. Boyd, Naomi said, if you take that seat, you are going to spend the next several years saying true things to people who would rather yowsa them kinder, so you might as well start now. She drove out to the small blue house on a Saturday 3 weeks later, with a borrowed umbrella on the passenger seat. The rain wasn't doing anything that day. It was just gray. The paperback was gone from the arm of the recliner. It was shelved now, 3rd row down, with its spine facing out, finished. And there was a new photograph on the wall by the stairs, down at the bottom, where the newest ones go. 2 women on a porch somewhere, squinting into a sun that had happened a long time ago. Verna Ruddock saw her looking. That's Elizabeth, she said. My niece found it in a box. It's the only one of the both of us, since I don't know when. She looks like you. She looked better than me, and she knew it. She made coffee this time. They sat with it, and Naomi put a letter on the table between them. That's your release, she said. The agreement you signed is void. All of them are. There were 61 up across the system, and every one of them is gone as of the 11th. Verna Ruddock did not pick it up. Do I owe the money back? No, ma'am. That's the 3rd paragraph. She looked at the envelope a long moment. So I can talk now. You can talk to any BBD you want about anything you want for the rest of your life, and nobody on this earth can do one thing about it. And you'd like me to. And Naomi said, no. Verna Ruddock's head came up sharp. I'd like you to be able to, Naomi said. That's the whole reason I came out here. I said a thing to you in this room that I have thought about every day since. And you were right, and I was wrong, and I would like to not be that woman twice. Verna sat back in her recliner. There's a young man from a newspaper been calling, she said, 3 times. I'd imagine. He's very polite. They usually are. He wants me to tell him what it felt like. She folded her hands. 68 years old, and a man I've never met wants to know what it felt like. Naomi waited. I'm not going to, Verna said. All right. Not because I'm scared. I want you clear about that. I'm not one bit scared. She lifted her chin. It's because it's mine, it happened to me, and I carried it, and it cost me a day with my sister. And I have decided I am not going to hand it to a stranger so he can put it in the newspaper next to a picture of an airplane. Yes, ma'am. Is that all right? And Naomi Reeves, who had gotten on an airplane in a gray turtleneck and lost her recording and her boss's trust and the job she had wanted for 9 years, said, Mrs. Ruddock, that's the only part of this whole thing that's actually justice. Verna Ruddock looked at her over the glasses. Now you're learning, she said. Drink your coffee. It's getting cold. 3 months later, Naomi Reeves flew out of Halloran International on a Tuesday morning. She came in through door 3, because it's closest to short-term parking, and because a man used door 3 for 31 years. The did what terminals do. She went through security and kept her shoes on, and it still delighted her. Came up the escalator into the concourse and turned right instead of left, because she wasn't going to the lounge. She had stopped going to the lounge. Down in the arrivals hall at a customer service counter with no marble and no brass letters and nothing on earth that smelled like eucalyptus, a woman with silver hair cut short and squared off at the back was standing behind the desk. Still standing. No pins on the jacket now, no stool anywhere in sight. She was explaining something about a rebooking to a man with a duffel bag, and she was doing it patiently. And from 30 feet, she looked like any one of 10,000 women working an airport counter on a Tuesday morning. Naomi stopped. Deborah Vance felt it, the way people do, and looked up. They looked at each other across the arrivals hall for maybe 3 seconds. Naomi did not smile. Deborah did not nod. There was nothing to say, and neither of them tried to say it. There was no version of that in that moment that would have made either woman feel better, and both of them knew it. And that shared knowing was the only thing that passed between them. Then the man with the duffel bag asked a question, and Deborah Vance turned back to him and answered it. And Naomi walked to her gate, gate B14. She got there 20 minutes early, which is not 3 hours, but it was something she'd never entirely stopped doing either. The agent working the podium was 26 years old, with a fade cut sharp enough to slice bread. He was in the middle of a boarding, calling groups, moving people along, and when he saw her coming down the line, his face did something with nothing professional in it at all. "Mrs. Reeves, Mr. Boyd, you flying with us today?" "Looks that way." She held up her phone. He scanned it. The scanner chirped green, and Jarrett Boyd's eyes went across that little display, left to right, and nothing happened. Nothing at all. No half-second. No elevator settling. No small gray tag sitting in a field with no provenance, put there by a man who died before she finished law school, carried forward through 4 migrations and 1 signature and 31 years of drawers. Just a name, and a seat, and flight. "You're all set, Ms. Reeves." He handed the phone back. "Window a good flight, ma'am." "Thank you, Jarrett." "Yes, ma'am." And she walked down the jet bridge. It was cold, the way they always are. Nobody stopped her. Nobody asked the purpose of her travel. Nobody looked at her bag, or her shoes, or the place where earrings would be. No supervisor came out from behind a counter with a smile like a light coming on in an empty room. No cabin lead stepped over her row like a crack in a sidewalk. No man in a good suit made a small sound through his nose. She got on the airplane, sat down, buckled her belt and folded her hands and looked out the window at Hangar 4, sitting there across the ramp in the gray morning with its doors open and its lights on, and men in vests moving around and underneath something enormous. And Naomi Reeves thought, nobody asked me anything. That's it. That's the whole thing. $4.8 billion in 9 days, and a job I wanted for 9 years. And what it bought is a Tuesday morning where a woman walks onto an airplane and nobody asks her anything, Daddy. You never got one of these. 31 years, and you never once got a morning where nobody asked you anything. The engines came up. Somewhere behind her, a flight attendant started the announcement about seat belts, and somebody's tray table clicked, and the airplane began to move. She didn't cry. She sat up straight the way she had been taught and watched Hangar 4 go past the window and out of the frame and put her hand flat on her mother's pearls at the base of her throat and let the whole thing go. Field 0447 was purged from every Kestrel Air system 14 months later, verified by an independent auditor who was not Naomi Reeves. 1,140 letters went out. 206 people wrote back. The Cabin Harmony Index was abolished in the same document that reinstated Kayla Brandt, who spent the following year on a working group that sat down with passengers who had been moved and listened and defended nothing. She said afterward that the hardest part was that almost none of them were angry. They kept apologizing to her for taking up her time. Deborah Vance was removed from supervisory duty and offered a retirement package with a very good number on it and one standard paragraph in the middle. She read the paragraph and gave it back. She took a customer service desk in the arrivals hall instead, $16 an hour less, 40 months short of the pension she had been counting on since 2011. The monitor's office asked her to sit for 11 interviews. She sat for all 11. She never once asked what would happen to her. Somebody from the union asked her why she gave the package back. Because it had a paragraph in it, and she said. Jarrett Boyd held his seat on that panel for 6 years.